Hi, I'm Adam Luke.
Hi, I'm Judy N, and we are two licensed marriage family therapists.
The SessionWell podcast was created for pre-licensed clinicians, licensed clinicians, and the everyday Joe. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, welcome. As you guys can tell, there's some things that are new. This is SessionWell. We are in season 4 now. Can't believe it. And you probably just heard our intro for the first time. We're pretty stoked about that. Well, my name is Adam Luke, and I have my amazing co-host.
I'm Judy N.
And today we have one of our favorites, our returning speakers or guests, if we want to call it that way. But what's crazy is the three of us started our MFT journey together. We met in grad school. We took tests together. We studied together. And it's crazy to sit here as three licensed professionals with our own niches and our own practices. And that's what we're bringing today is a topic that I think really needs to be talked about more. And I'm going to let our guest host speak more on this because I know I'm going to bungle it up. So who are you?
So I am Heather Silva. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I guess I could just start to talk about some of the populations that I serve. I serve a wide range, but today the one that I actually do want to focus on is pre and postnatal issues with mothers and even couples. So the husband coming alongside or the partner in the relationship coming alongside the wife or the girlfriend. And what is she experiencing? But my biggest heart is does the woman even realize what she's going through? And so I love serving this population. It's very dear and near to my heart. I'm currently taking clients in North Orange County right now out of Placentia. And so if there are any women out there or any couples out there who think they might be fitting into this population, I hope they do reach out. I would love to talk to them.
You are my go-to referral for what I call a mom boss. Like,
Thank you.
You definitely have that niche down, and it's cool to see how you've developed that. But I remember, so guys, before we started this podcast today, we were sort of talking about where we were going to go. And I'll tell you, as a man, I was already feeling a little bit of anxiety because she just said a phrase I hadn't even conceptualized. She said pre and post natal problems. Now, in my mind, I always go pre postpartum. Like that's the word. That's just the word that comes in. And I feel like there's a rigidity to that that doesn't really show everything that's out there and really what a woman is experiencing as she's not just physically going through the transformation of becoming a mom, but mentally, emotionally. And how as men and significant others, how can we show up to support that person in our life?
Yeah. And I'm super excited to have Heather here today too, because I'm a new mom. And so I just had my baby 3 months ago, and people keep asking me so how's postpartum? And I'm always like, because whenever I hear postpartum, I just think, postpartum depression. And so people have asked me to check in with myself, do you have postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety? A part of me is like, I don't know. I don't think so. And so it's just interesting because there are so many changes. And I love the fact that Heather also sees couples that have also recently had a baby or, just have children in general, because it really does change the dynamic of your relationship with your partner.
Very much.
So for covering those topics, I think would be super helpful for anyone who's kind of in that journey right now.
And the other part of this too, that I do work, and I have a current couple on my caseload that they started out because of infertility issues. They were struggling to even have a child. And so I've been working with them. And fortunately, I think it was the third try, they have been able to get pregnant. And so now I'm kind of walking with them. She has yet to have her baby yet, but she's very close. But we've been walking now through that. But when we started, it was plain out infertility issues of we keep trying. We've gone through IVF, it has failed before, kind of going through that grief and loss. And then, okay, we're about to start this all over again. Now let's get past that grief and loss of the first one. Let's now set our minds to, we're going to try this again, which they're literally putting their eggs in one basket. Okay. And then they were able to get pregnant on the third try. And that in itself, I mean, I will work with the male. I tend to refer out to another person, George Garcia. And he is really good on the male side of the infertility issue and that struggle of supporting a male to where, because that's a beast in itself. Right? That's a whole beast in itself. It is already a thing for a woman to say, am I able to carry a child? Am I able to carry a child to term? And there are some significant losses within that realm as well. And I mean, again, this population, I don't think people realize the different avenues that come with this. And unfortunately, I have experienced these on my own. And so, I mean, my background is I've been pregnant 3 times and I have 2 children, and then I have my angel baby. And that loss that I personally experienced, the loss that my husband experienced, and the loss that we had together, and the journey that we had to go through together was, it was different. And we had certain mile markers. And then when we were able to get pregnant again, and then the PTSD, so to speak, and I always wrap PTSD in as that, because I think right now too, this is my side story on this one, PTSD is thrown out there a lot right now. And I always like to say, is it acute stress disorder or is it PTSD? The clinician and therapist in me wants to say that. For us, it was PTSD because we had already been past 6 months. And, I found out I was pregnant with my second very early on. Well, medically, you can't see the baby yet on an ultrasound. So we're going in blindly, and we have an ultrasound tech not saying anything to us. And I'm going, it's not there. It's not there. It's not there. And we walked out to the parking lot and just sobbed and crumbled. Come and find out we were completely fine. We had a healthy baby. But that, because of our first miscarriage, was now carried over into the second one. And that mental state was hard. I mean, we were then now stressed out, which for a mom is the worst place to be, is to be very stressed out and have those hormones moving. And so and this is why I'm so passionate about coming along these women and going, let's not put the cart before the horse. If you're only at 4 weeks, you cannot see anything yet. And that's exactly what happened to me. I think I was between 4 and 5 weeks, and they're going, sure you're pregnant? Are you sure you're pregnant? And I'm going, I thought I was, I don't know. And it's like you just break down. Women just break down.
And I think too with, when people think, I don't know if everyone thinks about this, but I think that sometimes when we're talking about babies and pregnancy, it is, there's just different chunks of time. Like it's the first season of trying. Can we even have a baby, and all the challenges that come with that? Is it on your timeline? Is it not what I thought it was going to be? Are there complications? And then actually being pregnant, like what Heather's saying, like I hadn't like this was our first baby. And so I didn't have a lot of experience with it, but I would say even someone that hadn't experienced a miscarriage, every doctor's appointment was very stressful. It was like, am I going to see a heartbeat? Is something going to be wrong? Anytime there was any spotting or bleeding. Sorry that's graphic for listeners.
It's the truth. This is what we got to get.
It's a true story.
Right. Or like, even when you start feeling them kick, and then the moments where you don't feel them kick, you're like, oh my gosh. And then it's when the actual delivery happens, and then after delivery. So it's and like all the genetic tests, it's a constant state of being very nervous because you have no control. And so seeing someone like Heather, like how do we as women and men too, like, cause you have to be there with us, if you're involved in stuff, but like, how do we manage our own stress and anxiety without affecting our baby? And just how do we get through it mentally? Cause it's constant. It's before, it's during, it's after.
And the mental state itself is the hardest thing for me to walk the journey with, because I can't get inside you and say it's going to be okay, because I don't know it's going to be okay. And with women, it's a whole different beast of grounding exercises. So since I'm EMDR trained, I would simply say, hey, let's just do some EMDR on this. You can't do that with pregnant women. You're not really supposed to do EMDR with pregnant women. And for those of you who don't know what EMDR is, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I believe you're going to have somebody in a future podcast actually dive into that. So I'll wait for him to talk about that. But for pregnant women, it's actually not the best thing to do, because if you tap into something, you could put their bodies into even more stress. And we're trying to alleviate this stress. So when I work with women who are going, I am at my 6 months or 6 week appointment, 8 week appointment, 12-week appointment, 14-week appointment. Okay, I'm out of the first trimester, but that doesn't mean I'm in the clear yet. And so I'm constantly going, okay, so what do we know? What do we know that our bodies are able to do? We know that we are able to breathe. And it's like simple things like that. We know we're able to breathe. So let's breathe through this. And then, what are we? And then I just go through the common grounding techniques. 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear. And I'm doing that. And so I'm going, if you are in your doctor's office, which, well, now they're going, well, I can see an ultrasound tech. I can see it. I'm like, okay, don't look at the ultrasound tech. Don't look at the screen. What other things do you see? Right. And so they're saying, I could see a soap dispenser. I'm like, soap dispenser is not scary, right? Soap dispensers are in a bathroom at home. They're in the kitchen at home. That helps us feel clean. And so then I'll sit there and go, what does a soap dispenser do? Right. And I literally have to frame it that, because it's almost like, let's get your mind off the scary and go to the simple, because it is not easy. Right. And Judy, like you said, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Oh, I would text you like every before every appointment, after every appointment, like, Heather, help ground me. What am I supposed to expect in this appointment? And
depending upon your doctor also depends upon how much information you're actually getting. And I happen to have 2 different doctors between my second and my third, just because of insurance switches. And so the doctor that I had with my baby girl, he was great, but he was very like, this is what it is. This is, like, here you go. To where when I had my son, she would come in and automatically be giving me a hug. It was just a different dynamic. And so it wasn't that I didn't trust one more than the other, but I also had to learn personalities and understand then that this is what I was going to get. Right. Like my first with the male doctor. And again, it wasn't that he had bad bedside matter, but for him, I was kind of like, I don't think you understand. I need all the information. And he one day looked at me and said, if I gave you all that information, exactly what are you going to do with it? And I went, I don't know. And he goes, exactly. If I give you all this information, do you understand it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So then I'll have women or, Judy texting me and going, what do I expect out of this appointment? What does this mean? And I'm going, well, I think I know what it means, but I'm not the doctor. I just know my experience. And so with my couple right now, who they're going to have their child in May, I believe it is. And she's like, well, and mind you, she's going through pregnancy during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different thing. And Judy, you went through your whole pregnancy start to finish in a pandemic.
The hardest part I think about having babies during the pandemic was that I couldn't bring my husband in to any of the appointments. And so our doctor was really awesome. And like, in like some of the bigger appointments, when you're seeing like the anatomy or like the first heartbeat for the first time, he let me sneak him in. But our biggest fear was, okay, what happens? Like, how bad is the pandemic going to be? Where I know some couples, when they actually had the baby, sometimes their husbands couldn't be there, or, you had to wear a mask while actually delivering the baby. And so I know for our experience, we actually didn't have any visitors, which actually ended up being nice for us. But for some families, like they miss out on being able to visit their loved ones in the hospital. So having babies in the pandemic had its own set of challenges.
Yeah. I know of one family that close friend of mine where he wasn't able to see his child be born because they delivered like March or April of the pandemic, like when it was at the surge, and they had, it's funny how you get in these baby bubbles where you have like couples that are all having babies around the same time. And our other two friends, they had like snuck in, like, boom, I was there to be there for my kid. And then for him, he was like, they're walking through the door, like her water's broken. They're like, we got it from here. And at that point, there's no arguing, right? There's nothing I can do. They're just saying you cannot come in. And he got to sit in his car and find out about it. So
and that right there breaks my heart, because one, it's, the man's right as the father to be there supporting his significant other, being able to see his child born. But now the therapist in me goes, I wonder what kind of grief and loss he had to have just in the fact that he didn't get to be a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, what I can tell you is I knew it was big enough for him that he's gone to therapy as a changing dad. And then also I know just he was really broke up about that, because you have your expectations and your realities.
Yeah.
And so as traditional dad or whatever it is like, I get to cut the cord, I get to be there.
Right.
I'm gonna take some pictures. And then it was like, well, no, it was actually a 24-hour period before he was able to see his wife or his kid. And it was like, man, like, imagine, I can't put myself in that spot of sitting in the parking lot for 24 hours before being able to see
wringing your hands over what is happening. I mean, when I was able to have our daughter, I mean, my husband was a stress ball. And because of the way my labor went, my daughter was just moving around a lot. So they would keep having to move the heart monitor around. Well, my husband going, there's something wrong. She's not going to be alive. And that was his mental state. So he was next to me the whole time, just holding my hand, talking to me in my ear. And then once it was all over, I mean, you could just see the exhaustion on him of, I just had to support my wife, thinking the whole time, I don't know if my baby girl, who is supposed to be full term, is actually going to be alive when she comes out. Right. And that, I mean, for not even the women, that's the male. Right. And so again, that's why I'm always saying it's a big women's road, but the male is such a big part of this unit that has to also be going through their own therapy, or right into therapy on the couch next to the wife and going, yeah, that was tough for me too. I mean, I think that a lot of people, and yeah, I'm going to focus on the women, of course, but I don't neglect the male, because I think the stigma is it's the woman's, I don't want to say the woman's job, but it's the woman's role because she's the one that's pregnant. But I'm going, what about the male? They're coming right alongside them, or whatever significant part, the significant partner. Let me say it that way, please. The significant partner is in that journey with them, kind of standing on the sideline of, I'm not the one that's pregnant, but I'm watching you do this.
So I might not be carrying the child, but I'm also carrying emotions. And I think for sometimes when we look at significant others or just males, of the fact that we sometimes get treated as if we don't have the emotional capability of being in that same place. And our anxieties might be different. Moms, they might be like, let's build the nursery. Let's do this. You're externalizing them different, where all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, he seems like he's fine. He's not really been doing anything. And what they don't understand is silence from a male is terrible, because what we're doing is we're just internalizing during that period. We're carrying all these thoughts and worries and feeling like we can't ask the question. Like, what do we do if worst case happens? What happens if baby doesn't come out with 10 fingers, 10 toes? And so sometimes people go, oh, well, no, he's a rock. He's a pillar. And you don't realize this guy is a shell. Like, he's holding it together, but he doesn't know. And that's why when we were talking at the start of this podcast about baby blues and post and pre-natal and partum, and it's like, I feel like a lot of times men will stop talking just because we don't want to sound stupid, when really it's like, just ask all the questions. There is no stupid question about this. And it's okay to be scared, because like you guys have kids on the ground. I'm in another setup where my wife and I are going to actively start trying. And our biggest fear has been the 10 fingers and 10 toes, like healthy baby. And it's interesting to hear us like in the beginning be like, oh, would it be cool to have a girl or have a boy? And now it's like healthy baby, healthy baby. And so you sit there and you go, okay, well, what's this going to look like? How do I support you? How do you feel supported? Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. And it's, I don't want to say normal, but I'm going to say it's completely normal to be in that state. Right. They're, and the easiest thing for people to say is, oh, you're going to be fine. Well, am I?
Yeah.
That's my thing was, am I? Because I know that Judy and I'm going to call you out, Judy. Judy and I both kind of had a pregnancy where we were sick for a very long time in it. Right. We were just nauseous.
Oh yes, I thought
yeah, sorry.
Oh my gosh, first trimester was
yeah,
like terrible.
Right.
Everything.
And so
the heightened smells, like oh my god, things that you see in the movies, they don't tell you everything in pregnancy. You actually go through it. But the first trimester was awful. But kind of what Adam was saying, like with the men, Heather, do you have any suggestions? Like, yes, we as women, we're going through it, right? We're sick, we're nauseous, our bodies are changing, but literally our significant others, they're on the sidelines watching us go through it. Have you noticed any just like recommendations that you can help the significant other help support the female?
So with the couple that I'm working with right now, again, they're pandemic. So this was a twofold thing for him to do because he has not been able to go into the room for a lot of those appointments. So the wife doesn't know this. But he has been filming on his phone what he has been seeing her journey and his journey like as a video diary that he's going to be giving to her once baby is born. And so he, him and I had this side conversation one time because he goes, I feel very helpless. I don't know how to help her. I can give her saltines. I can rub her feet. I can drive her to the appointment, but I don't feel like there's anything else I can do. And so I said, but there's a lot that you can do. And what you can do is video diary what your experience is, your excitement, you're scared, your nerves, and talk to her through that because he feels that he can't talk to her right now because he's going to be putting more on her. And so I said, well, you're not going to be putting more on her necessarily, depending upon what you have to say, but why don't you video diary it? And what would that mean for her and this unity of she, at the end of this, her realizing how much you were next to her this whole time. And so he's been snapshotting different things throughout it and then videoing, and he's going to present it to her as this like long, basically video book, storybook for her and her pregnancy and travel. And that was something that him and I came up with. But all that to say is I think that the man he needs to look at the woman and say, and again, it's all about your verbiage. I don't know specifically what you're feeling, but I'm next to you and I want you to know that I see you. I hear you. I love you, but also I'm struggling too, and I'm not putting that on you, but I want you to know that you're not struggling alone. I think it's the validation, being seen, but also you also being authentic with your fears and not necessarily saying, I need you to fix these right now, but saying, hey, you're not alone. I have these same fears too. I fear that our baby might not go to term. I fear that our baby might have a deformity, or I feel that our baby might, whatever, come out and have something wrong. I fear that too. Can we hold hands in this together and support each other instead of just saying, I'm on the sideline? Y'all are not on the sideline. You guys are right next to the woman, right?
And so what you're really highlighting there is don't put yourself on the sideline.
Right.
Don't sort of accept whatever that social normative might be. Like, oh,
we are not in the 50s where males are, granted pandemic, but beyond pandemic, we're not in the 50s anymore where men sit in a waiting room smoking a cigar anymore. Men are allowed in the room to be holding their wife's hand and to being every part of it.
Oh yeah, and we
Mm.
zoomed. Like
Yeah.
my husband was a part of every, even though he wasn't physically in the appointment, just knowing that he was in the car, either FaceTiming, or zooming in, like it made it so much easier
Mm.
journey because I never felt alone. Even when my head was in the toilet vomiting, like
Yeah.
he really was off to the sideline being like, "Hey, what do you need? Do you want me to rub
Mhm.
your back?" And I'm like, "No, don't touch me." Um,
You
I'm
bastard,
a
don't touch
Mhm.
me.
drop
Uh-huh.
alone person.
Yeah. Yeah.
The moment I was done throwing up, like he had, ginger ale ready for me.
Yep.
He did
Mm.
everything around the house that I needed that he knew that because I was sick, I couldn't do. And so just
Mhm.
the weight
Mm.
of the stress not having to be on me, knowing that the laundry was done or the dogs were fed, was just one less thing that I had to worry about. And I think that's how men like can step in and
Yeah.
help, is that,
Mhm.
just and even sometimes just not even asking, but just doing it,
Mhm.
was really helpful. Like especially if you know your partner and like what makes her feel stressed out, if you can do those things to
Mm.
take care of it, it
Yeah.
really alleviates a lot of the
Yeah.
pressures that we have to do because we're so sick sometimes.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
Mm.
for me, I never knew what I was going to want to eat until I knew it. And I mean, my husband basically had Postmates on dial, like speed dial. I mean, there was a point where I only wanted the habit burger, but if I smelled the onions, I was going to be sick. So he would be like all over it, like in capital letters, like, do not put onions on any burgers. And I was like, I can't have it in the house. And he's like, okay, no onions in the house. And I mean, he just, it was out.
Mhm.
But I think on the mental health side, I want to do kind of go deeper into that. Women have anxiety, just like you were
Mm.
talking about, Adam. Is it going to have 10 fingers and 10 toes? That's anxiety. And it depends upon how high your anxiety you want it to
Mm.
go. And like I had with my second, and Judy, I believe I talked to you a couple of times about this. I had a very random anxiety that I
Mm.
really developed in my head. I had this scenario that if it ever went to fruition, I mean, God help us, right? But I mean, I would sit up at night and just sob. And I was pregnant with my second,
Mm.
and it was all about my first. And I was like, she's going to get kidnapped. She's going to be taken across, she's going to be
Mm.
taken out of the country. And in my head, I could hear her crying. And it's like, where did that develop?
Mhm.
And I just sat and I was in
Mm.
therapy going, just sobbing. And I was just like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And it was this anxiety that I had.
Mm.
And parts of it, I mean, my anxiety came from, my gosh, my baby girl is not going to be an only child anymore. I can't give like her
Mm.
100% of my time anymore. And then going, but she's going to have so much fun with her little brother. And does she even
Mm.
understand that? And what is this dynamic going to be like? And oh my gosh, what if they don't like each other? Oh my gosh, what if they hate each other for the rest of their lives and they never talk to
Mm.
each other as soon as they hit 18? And all these things that hadn't even happened. So I was perseverating around things that were not needed.
Mhm.
Right. And it was the whole cart before the horse thing. I was put in something that hadn't even happened yet, and I was catastrophizing it. And
Mm.
so my personal therapist had to sit there and do grounding exercises with me of, okay, what do you firmly know? What is your evidence that any of that's going
Mm.
to happen? I have a fantastic relationship with my brother and my parents. So why am I catastrophizing something that I've
Mm.
never even experienced? Now with women or, a male who maybe does not have a great relationship with their sibling, we can sit there and talk about that evidence as a therapist. We
Mm.
can go, okay, you have some evidence, you have some experience. Let's talk through that. What can we change now? What was different then? And working through that therapy of in process of itself.
Mhm.
But for a woman, I mean, we can catastrophize things that don't need to be there, especially when we're pregnant. The hormones involved. And for me, especially from my first to my second, I'm going to use the word grieving loosely, mind you. I'm using that
Mm.
loosely, but I had to grieve the fact that I wasn't just going to be a mom of a one anymore.
Mm.
And what I had to say, she doesn't get 100% of our undivided attention. And I was like, I'm going to screw her up and she's never going to feel seen anymore. The girl is seen, right? I mean,
Adorable.
she's seen by us and she knows she's seen by us. And But that, I mean, that could be an example of, anxiety that women don't realize that they have. If you have PTSD from a miscarriage or a birth at, maybe you had to have your baby and it was a stillborn, or had to have your baby within, week 24 or 26 when you weren't supposed to have them. Maybe your baby was in the NICU for a really long time, and then you're going to try for another one. You've got some PTSD and anxiety already popping up. And my encouragement to couples who are thinking about having another kid who have experienced that is, you already should be in therapy to start bringing that down before you are able to get pregnant, right? So for us, I remember my cousin who had a miscarriage. She looked at me after my miscarriage and she said, before you try for another one, you need to be okay if you lose it. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, if you're not in the mental state to possibly have another miscarriage, you shouldn't get pregnant again. And I was like, wow, okay. And I had to go sit there and think about that for a while. And for me and my faith, I had to lean into my faith at that point, and I had to do a lot of prayer. And, my husband and I actually went to the elders at one point and had them pray over us to try to help with us. Me as a faith believer, I leaned in. I know that not everybody is of a faith, but when my cousin said that you have to be able to accept the fact that you might miscarry again, that was mind blowing for me, because I know people who have had 6 miscarriages in a row, 8 miscarriages in a row, and then finally get pregnant. That's 8 losses. That is 8 griefs. And if you are unable to manage your anxiety or depression or PTSD around that, you're putting your body into stress. And though sometimes also can result in some prenatal or postpartum OCD, right? You might sit there and go, I have to do all the things, or I'm not going to be able to manage my life. And that is a diagnosis that I don't think a lot of people realize that can happen in women, is that they suddenly have this OCD about them and they don't realize it. So maybe it's constantly sanitizing something for a baby, or if I don't eat things in this order, and it's not to manage me being nauseous, but if I don't eat things in this order, then my baby's not going to be healthy and I'm not going to be healthy, and then I'm going to miscarry. Right. And so,
well, because what you're really highlighting there is, it's funny, if we removed it out of any other context, we would go, well, look, you've had this trauma in your life or whatever has popped up, and now you're seeking control. That's what OCD is. It's the seeking of control to manage anxiety. And yet all of a sudden, when women have children, we're like, what the heck? Why is she crazy? She's no longer pregnant. Well, no, it's not that at all. Now there's maybe even more anxiety on the ground because I'm trying to keep this flesh blob from killing itself. Yeah. And so then why is it that we lose sort of the kindness of being able to sit around someone and be like, okay, maybe it's more than just stop it, that might not help anything, because what we're doing is we're completely dismissing mom while also completely trying to mitigate whatever behaviors driving us nuts. It's not looking about being helpful. It's about being quiet.
Yeah.
And then kind of just because these are kind of questions that people have been asking, like me, so I'm sure other women have gotten it too. What would you say to a woman, whether or not she even knows that she has any sort of postpartum challenges? Like, what's the difference between just being like, hey, I'm super sleep deprived and I'm cranky, versus being like, okay, now maybe you should actually just seek help?
Well, I think that also, so there's a 3 parts to that then, right? Sleep deprivation, getting to know a new life, new schedule, baby blues, and then postpartum depression, right? So obviously, sleep deprivation screws with anybody's head. I mean, for anybody who has gone through high school or college and pulled an all-nighter, you know that you are just not firing on all cylinders the next day. Now, we are hypervigilant as a parent because we are sleep deprived, because even if you sleep, you've got one ear out listening for baby. And then it's like, finally the baby cries, and it's like this fire alarm that is set off, and you're like, I've got to get the burp towel, and I have to get the bottle, or I have to start nursing, and is he getting and I've got to change his diaper, and it's like, and so it's like your body goes overwhelmed. It's all flooded because you hear a baby cry, and the baby goes back to sleep, and then it's like this huge dropout of all of your flooding, and you're just like, I'm exhausted, and then you don't know what to do with that.
It's not
Pardon?
like it's not like in college when you have like you pull one nighter. It's like every day.
It is, and depending upon what's going on with the baby, it could go on for weeks or months. So then you have, and sometimes there's the breakdown of tears of like, I am just so tired, and they just start crying, and I'm like, yes, let it out. Your nervous system is adjusting right now. Let those tears out, let it reset itself. Now let's level up to baby blues. Baby blues is like this, I want to hold my kid all the time. I miss being pregnant. I miss, just being my husband, and I'm just sad, but I don't know why. Now that's our hormones adjusting, obviously, right? That, we went from our hormones being at a certain level. Now they're adjusting. And then at the 6 week to 8 week marker, if you're still feeling that, now you're looking at postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And at 8 weeks, for instance, women really tend to they're just discombobulated, right? Like they don't know, like for me, I had postpartum depression with my second. And I remember texting my husband I'm just overwhelmingly sad. And I don't think he's ever called me back so quickly. And he was like, I'm coming home. What do you need? And I was like, and he's like, do you need to take a shower? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I need. I just feel sad. And it wasn't that I personally wanted to hurt myself. I didn't want to hurt my child, although those are effects sometimes of postpartum depression, not necessarily baby blues, but postpartum depression. It can get very, very scary when a woman's just like sleep deprived, hormones are off, these, all of these things are building up, and they might resent their kid for a while. And to resent their kid, they might want to hurt themselves or hurt their child. Now, those are more of the extreme cases, but it's kind of saying, okay, let's intervene. What are you feeling? Are you sad? That's a valid emotion. You need to tell somebody that you feel sad. And maybe you need to have a girls' night. Maybe you need somebody to just hold the baby. Maybe you need somebody to just hold you. I don't know what it is. And there's a loss sometimes in a woman when they feel like, I am literally now, this is so bad, but I'm like, babies are little leeches. They take everything from you. Right? Especially from womb, right? They take the food first. They take all of your exhaustion because you were building a little human inside of you. Then they come out and they still need you. They need your skin to skin contact. They need to hear your voice. They need to smell you. If you're breastfeeding, they need your milk, right? They are taking everything out of you. It is okay to feel sad.
Well, I liked how you framed it there of like, I might have a period where you didn't say in love, but you said, essentially you said there's going to be resentment and there's going to be a period of time where you have this. And I think that period of time comment is the biggest mark, because for so many, we go, oh my gosh, obviously this is permanent now. And I've sat with moms who have gone into that space and it's like, is this going to be like how I feel forever? And it's like, well, let's not make permanent decisions off of temporary emotions. And just what you said, like, I think, and I'm not going to try to mansplain, but just from what I've conceptualized, try to get into that space is like, okay, let me go through this for 9 to 10 months. I'm puking, throwing up. My life is changing. I've lost autonomy in a lot of ways. I can't tie my own shoes. I don't like the food I used to like. Then baby comes out. Everyone says this is supposed to be the most wonderful time in my life, but my abdomen still hurts. My skin looks different. My body's different. This thing keeps on just mauling my boobs. And so, see, I've tried to get pretty deep in here. And so then again, it's interesting because I've sat with women, and when they've explain this, I go, well, I can't tell you that I know exactly what you feel, but I can say I don't know how I would feel perfect. It's not a Hallmark movie. It's not a Lifetime movie. It's okay to struggle because it's a change in this life development pattern. You've lost your autonomy. You're on social media, you're watching all your other friends going out, going to Fiji, going doing stuff. What are you doing? Well, this is the fourth time I've claimed throw up off of me, or my baby just had a diaper blowout in the bed, like whatever might happen. And it's okay for you to be like, oh man, I love you, but I'm struggling with you right now. Because we do that all the time with our loved ones, with our actual significant others. Whether it's marriage or partnership, there's never 100% of the time you're just absolutely adore this person. There's those moments, there's other parts where you're like, can you please pay the electric bill? Like it happens.
Well, I think another point to that, sorry, Judy, your baby is a stranger in a sense. You have no idea what their personality is like. And so let's add to the fact that a woman is all out of sorts. She's just had this baby. She's covered, maybe in sweat or vomit, or maybe she hasn't showered in 2 days. And, let's not forget bladder loss control, like loss of bladder control, right? You've just had this human sitting on your bladder. And then you look at this kid and you're like, I don't even know who you are. I carried you. I feel connected to you. If you do feel connected, not all women feel connected to their child right away, but they're a complete stranger to them. So then it's like, you're also kind of wedging yourself between me and my spouse or my significant other. And so the woman is kind of just sitting there, and then you're just kind of like, and why me? Why me? And I think that those are when they start adding up the losses, and when they start questioning why me, or why am I sad, or why am I looking at my spouse who doesn't have boobs, and you don't have to nurse. I have to nurse. Can't you nurse? Like, why don't your mammary glands work? Like, right? Like, why doesn't this happen to, and then you just start and then you're starting to resent people, or you're looking at people going, why did you ask me that? Do I look terrible? And you're kind of like, you look tired. Or like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean I look tired? Like, right? Like, you just start getting all of this agitation, if you will, right?
That's you're an emotional volcano and you're waiting to pop.
Right.
Very
right. It is hard. Like Heather was saying, like, not only do you sometimes maybe resent your baby, you can also resent your partner. If your partner's involved, it's like, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, like, I can nurse and like I love my husband's amazing, but like sometimes when he's just sleeping and I'm nursing at 3 a.m., I'm like, ugh, you get up and nurse. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's like, what the heck? And then you also have to pump. And then it's like Heather said, you get very prickly. And I think too, for a lot of women too, the postpartum just body image stuff too. If you a little bit about that, Heather, of just like, we're not who we used to be before pregnancy.
And I'm sorry to say, you're probably never going to be again. Right. So first off, anatomy biologic wise, it takes up to 1 year for a woman's body's organs, mind you, their organs to actually go back to where they used to be. It takes up to 1 year, right? Because your organs, everything inside of you was moved around to house your little baby. So things had to go places for your stomach to grow. So it takes up to 1 year for your body to go back to that, for your hormones to start to reset a little bit on a more leveled plane. Because depending upon if you're nursing or not, your hormones are still at a different rate because it's producing milk for your baby. If, I was not able to breastfeed for very long, so my hormones adjusted a lot differently at probably a quicker, I would say, speed than women who are able to breastfeed up to 1 year or 2 years. But then your body in general, like my body just changed. Like, I had to go try on shorts last week, and I remember I was actually texting Judy, and I was just like, I hate trying on jeans now. This is the most depressing thing ever. I've never been this size. Instead of me looking of, And now this is the easy thing. This is the whole easier said than done. Instead of me saying, I've been able to produce two amazingly adorable and sweet humans, I'm looking at my body as, what the heck did you just do to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sometimes
No,
we'll text like, "Oh, do we look like a mom right now?" It's like, why do we say
yeah,
that? You know
I
what I mean?
did. That's exactly what I said. I said,
It's
Judy,
totally
do I look
fine.
like a mom? And she was like, well, you look like a rocker, actually. Like the what I was wearing and
A
the,
rocker
I
mom.
was, yeah. And she was like, you look like a rocker, mom. But my first thing was, oh my gosh, do I look like a mom right now? I don't want to look like a mom right now. But then I also kind of get it because I'm like, well, mom jeans are the only thing that fits me right now, right? Like, because my body is differently. Like low-rise jeans are a thing of the past. I mean, they were supposed to be stayed in the 1990s. For some reason, they're coming back. They just need to be a thing of the past, right? Like crop tops are probably not going to be in my lifestyle for any time, if ever again. And I have to be okay with that. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it's body dysmorphic disorders per se, but I think that women have to also realize that it is okay that your body is different.
Yeah.
First off, I am not, I'm 37. I'm not 17 anymore. I'm not 27 anymore. I'm 37 now. And right there, my body has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am sad to say, I'm not supposed to look like I did when I was 17 years old. If I did, I there's a different issue, right? Like I might actually have a hormonal issue if I was still looking like I was when I was 17. I need to
Yeah.
embrace the fact that my body changed and that I'm still healthy
Mm-hmm.
and that I was able to provide life to somebody, right? And I think that is a mental state that I constantly have to tell myself is, do I need to lose weight? Maybe, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Do I love myself for the fact that I was able to embrace two children, three pregnancies, two children, and say I had the capability of doing that. Maybe I'm not a size 0 anymore. That's great. I still am able to have jeans and feel good, right? Like just put the
Mm-hmm.
jeans on. Like I know some women who are like, a mutual friend of me and Judy was like, yeah, I stopped wearing jeans, thong underwear, and bras. Like those are a thing of the past, right? She's like, I'm full booty, leggings, and sports bra for the rest of my life. And I'm like, okay. But what I heard in that was, I'm not going to try and make myself feel good because I was able to get into a certain side. I'm making myself feel comfortable because I love who I am. That's
Yeah.
all I heard from that.
And I think the one takeaway I have from this is also don't put words in your spouse or partner's mouth,
Mm-hmm.
because I've also sat, in the therapy space with men who are trying to emotionally connect with their wives or lean into intimacy. And I'm not talking about right after baby, but realizing that like sometimes as women, because you're seeing these changes, you're thinking, well, then there's no way anyone would want to be intimate with me, would want to love me, to have a sex life or whatever. And believe it or not, I've sat with more men that have been like, I see the changes in my wife's body and I look at what she's given us and what she's
Mm-hmm.
done for us. And, the stretch marks are not a deterrent. I think of the kids we have, the life we've built,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting because I think a lot of times when we get stuck in the rigidity of an anxious mindset, we go, obviously, my husband wants a skinny chick with the bigger boobs that are perkier and the butt that's still up in the air. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not necessarily true. I'm not going to say that there's not bad guys out there. There absolutely
Right.
are.
Right.
Absolutely are.
Yeah.
But don't put that stereotype on
Right.
your husband or partner
Mm-hmm.
because it may not be where you're at.
Nope.
He may not be chasing fantasy. He may be willing to engage in reality, but sometimes there's that push and pull. And so if I keep you at arm's distance, it's easier for me to like sort of accept the narrative I'm building in my head, where what, these are conversations to have. Or with couples that
Mm-hmm.
I've had that have gone through stuff like this, sometimes I'll say, you know what, how about this, take sex off the table, but I want skin to skin contact.
Yeah.
Find a way to lay with one another, watch a movie or whatever. And it's funny because whenever I tell my couples not to have sex, they have sex. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, it's interesting because go back into the exploring. Yes, your body's different. My spouse is different. We're
Yes.
different. like it doesn't have to be, let's go back to what it was, because that's going to be really hard to do. But we can build something amazing with what we got, and I absolutely adore my couples when they share the hysterical parts of their lives of where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they're down for 15 minutes. Like foreplay's out the window.
And that's what
everyone's on the same page. Like we have got to get this done. Focus. And so it's funny because people be like, oh, well, what about the 4 hours at the Hilton and all this other stuff? And you realize, no, we can still have meaningful connection. And it's going to be different. It's going to be squeezing your butt when we're making pancakes. It's going to be the different ways that we embrace, because we don't have to pull intimacy out. We don't have to pull love languages out, but it's going to be different.
And go ahead, Jude. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say how you said that for a female, her body may not ever go back to the way it was. Just same thing with the relationship. The couple will never go back to the way it used to be before kids, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just different.
But there is a grief and loss in that part of it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And I don't want to say grief as like let's just tear up and wipe tears away, but like you have to adjust or readjust your expectations of your relationship. It is not just two people anymore. There is a third person in it. And I know that sometimes it's when men might get jealous because the mother is really focused on baby, to where the male might not realize, but me going back to what I said before, that the woman now is resenting the man because he is unable to provide certain things for this baby. And then you've just got baby who's just like, I need somebody here.
Yeah.
Right. And so the expectations, you just have to realigning that. And that is where I look at couples and go, when was your last date night? When was your last flirty text? Right? Like you need to flirt where you can. And you need to get back to that, because that is when the arguments start, is when that loss of intimacy of any kind is gone. Not only is a woman already feeling down about herself, then when she loses the intimacy of any sort with her husband, lower, right? Now we're looking at self-esteem issues, because I have a child who's literally sucking the life out of me, and my significant other isn't paying attention to me. And so now we're looking at really some possible deep depression, and it's on the women's side to start to speak up about that, right? Like nobody knows about it until you say something.
But ignorance isn't a justification either. And that's where I think a lot of male therapists working with males are trying to get into the fact that, like, your wife can't pour out of an empty pitcher. So sometimes she's not going to be able to verbalize what she wants or needs. So it's going to be those moments of making sure the laundry's done. Make sure there's stuff in the fridge. Make sure there's stuff, like there's ways you can open your eyes outside of whatever you're doing and find ways to connect.
And that's what I think is hard too, for women who do develop an OCD pre or post having a baby. That's a part of it, right? Like again, how you were saying, it's the OCD is that sense of control. It's that sense of feeling like I do control my life. That is why it comes so quickly for a woman, especially, or it can come so quickly, especially postpartum, is because they're like, everything else in my life is completely out of control, but I can sure as heck make sure that the beds are always made, or the tub is scrubbed, or that I am checking on my child 5 times before I go to bed. Like this OCD and repetitiveness, that's the control that they're yearning for. Well, that's one thing. It's the matter if that OCD keeps carrying on and it becomes so impeding on their lifestyle that they're unable to even leave. Like they start catastrophizing again. Well, in my little bubble, I know that I can lock the doors and I can lock it 5 times to make sure that it's shut. But if I take my baby out, what's going to happen? Right? Am I going to burst into flames? Right? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So that's when I see women develop this OCD about them. And that is a very sensitive challenge that I have to poke at let's go back to your hard evidence. Has this happened before? Where is your evidence? And that is me. I mean, that's part of my therapeutic style, is I will always go back to what is your evidence that supports your thought on that. right? That's just a me of challenging and pushing. But with the women, I go, look, I'm here with you, but let's see what's your evidence on that? Oh, my husband's looking at other women. Has he ever done that before? No. How do you know he's doing that right then? Well, I just think about it because I know my body's different. You don't have evidence then. And I understand that your body is different. And I understand that feeling inside of me. But let's not assume that our husband's looking at somebody else because our body has changed. And then I'll say, do you even know if your husband thinks that you want him to touch you? Oh, I don't know. I just assumed. He might not know, right? This is when the husband sits on the sideline going, do you even want me to touch you? Because I know you've been touched a lot. Like there was a point where and I think I texted this to Judy one time. I was like, if I am touched one more time, I'm going to scream, because I had two little humans and then I had a husband who had needs. And I was like, if I can't, I am constantly touched. I have I can't even go to the bathroom without somebody visiting me, right? Like and I was just going crazy. Like I wanted to rip my hair out. And so then it was like this adjustment of, look, I would love to cuddle up on the couch with you, David, my husband. I would love to cuddle up on the couch with you, but can I just have a minute where I'm just by myself? And he's like, okay. And I was like, oh, that was easy. like all I had to do. And then he was just like, and like last night, all he did was put his hand out like this on the couch. And I was just put my hand in. And suddenly after a while, he just kind of tugged it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. And then like, I just snuggled up, but it was kind of just like, all he had to do was this. And it was like, you can take it or not, but I'm here, ready. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then it was like, okay, now I'm really ready. And then I went into my little nook on him. Right. But I think that is the thing too, that women they don't like me because of this and my body has changed and I've got all this stuff. And I'm going, well, no, did you even tell him? And I know that that's a humbling experience because women, and something I have battled with is, I'm supposed to be super wife and super mom. Here's my cape. Let me go take it out of the closet again because we have a new day. I'm supposed to be able to do all the things. Women are not supposed to be able to do it all.
No, not at all.
We're not. That's why we have a significant other, and that's why we have a village, is to help with us.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what would be your takeaways then for someone that is struggling to come either see you or to see well, first of all, I guess my first question is, what are some signs that you would say would be for someone to come see someone like you?
So some of the more obvious signs are things of, are you even reaching out to your friend? Do you even want to pick up the phone and text somebody? And it's not that you don't want to text somebody out of exhaustion or this fear of like, I'm going to have a 20-minute conversation and I just don't want to have that. That's not what I'm saying. Are you able to even articulate of, I'm having a bad day. I just need to send that text out. That's all. I'm having a bad day. And you might have to preface that text with, I'm having a bad day, but I can't have a conversation about it. But I need you to know that I'm just having an off day and I'm just letting you know. Another thing is I would like to say that it's, how long have you showered? Now, granted though, in the grand scheme of things, showering is hit or miss on when you're after a kid, right? Like all you're wanting to do is just take some downtime. So, but I would look at that of, do you want to shower? Or is it that you're unable to shower? If you're unable to shower because your day's chaotic, that's one thing. If it's I don't want to shower because I don't want to put time for me, then we're looking at time. I would want you to lean in. Are you looking at your child or your husband with like, I really don't like you right now? That's one thing. If it's another thing of like, I am resenting you, like you're I don't like you right now, like with disgust, I'm going to want you to lean into a therapist or again, looking at your quote unquote village around you and saying, I this isn't okay. Like, I'm not okay. There's these signs of typicalness, which go talk to somebody else. But I'm looking at the next mile marker of like, you don't even want to look, like you're looking at them with complete and utter disgust because of how much you're resenting them. And that's going to be a little bit too, again, the difference between baby blues and postpartum depression.
Well, Heather, I want to say thank you for being willing to sit down and have this conversation and stir our minds sort of get us in that space of starting to try to raise our own awarenesses, right? Like whether it's you're the spouse or significant other and you're watching your significant other go through this, and maybe it's time to lean in more in different ways, or it's maybe to make that nudge towards therapy. I think you completely nailed it. And sort of the takeaway that if you find yourself isolating away from your support group, then you owe it to yourself to find someone that might be that objective person, that person you don't have to worry about, the person you can come in and you can cuss at and leave it all out in the messy, nasty way of just life, and not have to worry about putting it into a nice little bow.
Yeah.
Then that might be the space for you, is to lean out and get yourself some help.
Yeah, definitely.
And then what would be some of your takeaways then for women and men that are, or couples too, that are struggling?
I think that they need to realize that they are not alone. And I know that that just sounds so cliche. It sounds so cliche. And not to make this any longer, but I think that it's still eradicating the fact that miscarriages are something that happens and infertility is something that happens. And it should not be something that women or men should be ashamed of. And I know that with my first miscarriage, I felt a little bit ashamed. It's not something to be ashamed of. Right. And I think that that is where, so if it's an infertility issues, if it's just that you have been trying for 2 years and, remember that window for getting pregnant is about this big, right? Even if you're ovulating, you got about 24 to 48 hour window that you might be able to conceive. That's a very short window. Right. And so I think that they, but then it's not talked about, right? Like I've had so many males look at me and they go, that's it, that's the only window. I'm like, you literally has got about 1 or 2 shots and then you're done. Like that window's closed. And it's mind-blowing. And I'm like, so now realize that like it is not something to be ashamed that you cannot get your wife or significant other pregnant. To the women, it's not a shameful thing that you were unable to get pregnant that month. So take that stress off and come in and talk to somebody, go to a support group, talk to your doctor, talk to a friend, because again, it is like 1 in 4 or 1 in 6. I always forget the caveat, but it's like 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage. But do you realize that? It's not something to be ashamed of. Lean into a support group, lean into a therapist, lean into, call a hotline even, and just say, I'm struggling today because I don't get what's going on. The Department of Mental Health has a lot of resources as well. If they're unable to afford a therapist, I charge between $150 and $175. That might be too high. Go to the Department of Mental Health, go to your doctor and see what your insurance might provide for you, that your insurance will, give. I know that for postpartum depression with my insurance, they would take me up to 1 year after my baby was born and pay for all of my services with a psychiatrist. Do women and men even know that? Do you even know what your insurance is going to cover to help you through these times? But my thing is this, it is nothing to be ashamed of, and talk about it. Talk about your struggles. You're going to hear more and more people say, I thought I was alone in that. You're not. Talk about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Heather. You absolutely nailed it, leaving us with a lot to think about.
It's always a pleasure talking with you guys.
Well, I'm telling you, I think it goes back to just the friendships that we made in college and grad school, but also just it's very encouraging for me to watch you have found a niche and found an area that you can serve individuals. And I think sometimes we don't realize how we can repurpose our pain and the experiences that we've had. And to just hear how you're helping couples and ladies through navigating this journey and realizing that there is no set standard. There is no, no one gets a gold star from this. It's whether or not, are you finding your happiness? Are you finding your joy? Are you finding your life fulfilled? And that's the best we can ever do.
Absolutely. And just kind of what my takeaway from what you're saying too, Heather, is that it's reaching out for help. It's just literally asking for help. You know that you're not alone. Whether it's another girlfriend or another husband, those 2 husbands, or if it's a support group or if it's a hotline, it's literally like babies are born every day and not born every day. And so there's reaching out to at least somebody and saying, hey, like I'm struggling. Seems like it's step number one from what you're saying.
And
So
that is the biggest, I'm sorry, Adam, but I'm just going to say this. That is the biggest debunk that we all have to do. And I've had to do is that women are not supposed to be superheroes. You have to reach out. You're doing yourself a disservice when you don't reach out. And I know that there is a pride in reaching out. I get that. But there is no shame in reaching out. And you're going to actually do yourself a beautiful thing is to reach out to your friend. We are not, nobody is created to be in life alone. If you want to talk about a God thing, is that God did create us to be in community with one another. And it's when we isolate ourselves that we are actually doing ourselves the biggest disservice. And something like creating and procreating another human, that is the biggest time not to isolate yourself. It is the biggest time to start talking about it.
So Heather, I know that someone's going to listen into this and be like, how can I get a hold of this lady? So how do they get a hold of you, Heather?
So I do have a Psychology Today page. So if you were to just go to Heather Silva, or if you go to Psychology Today, type in Heather Silva or Placentia, California, you're going to find me. I do have a website, but I'm currently doing some updates to that. But maybe in a future podcast, if I'm ever invited back, that website will be updated and you guys can go there. I have been trying to get a Caring for Your Nest support group going up, but Caring for Your Nest is exactly what it sounds like. You have a nest of your family, you have a nest of your home, and I'm here to care for all of that in different ways. So if there is if there is some pre or postnatal women out there who just want to be in a support group, I am ready and available. You can find me there and say, I would like to start up on that support group. Those meet on Monday. And I am more than happy. It's about 6 to 8 weeks, and we're going to talk about these different issues again. And so we can support each other because women should not be alone in this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for sitting with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Music in this podcast is sourced through filmmusic.io. The featured track is Energetic Upbeat by WinnieTheMoog, Creative Commons License 4.0. This podcast is copyrighted by SessionWell 2021, all rights reserved.